on her toes. But she said she's okay with them, so she's going to read for us this morning. Thank you, Tasha.
Deuteronomy 7 verse 1 to 6 and 21 to 22. When the Lord your God brings you into the land you're about to enter and occupy, he will clear away many nations ahead of you. The Hittites, Girgashites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. These 7 nations are greater and more numerous than you. When the Lord your God hands these nations over to you and you conquer them, you must completely destroy them. Make no treaties with them and show them no mercy. You must not intermarry with them. Do not let your daughters and sons marry their sons and daughters, for they will lead your children away from me to worship other gods. Then the anger of the Lord will burn against you, and he will quickly destroy you. This is what you must do. You must break down their pagan altars and shatter their sacred pillars. Cut down their Asherah poles and burn their idols, for you are a holy people who belong to the Lord your God. Of all the people on earth, the Lord your God has chosen you to be his own special treasure. No, do not be afraid of those nations, for the Lord your God is among you, and he is a great and awesome God. The Lord your God will drive those nations out ahead of you, little. You will not clear them away at all once, otherwise the wild animals would multiply too quickly for you.
I think it's a day of batteries dying on the mics. Yeah? Sorry? I thought you said so. Yeah, it's a day of batteries dying. And but thank you, Tasha, for reading that for us. And there's a lot of ites in there, wasn't there? There's an awful lot of ites. But I just want to share with you this morning just a message that God has put on my heart a little while ago. Back last year, it was a Saturday morning, and I felt I needed to get some exercise. And I felt I just needed to go for a walk. So back last year, I decided I thought I'd go up Cwmaman for a walk. And so I decided to go on my own and walk to the top of Cwmaman, have a sit down, pray, just spend some time with God, and then just walk back down. Now, I hadn't done it for a little while, and I hadn't done much exercise for a little while. And what I underestimated was how unfit I had become. Anyone done that? And then, so I started out with all this enthusiasm, forgot to take a drink with me, left it in the car. That was a mistake. And I started up the mountain. Cwmaman is about 3,000 feet high, and I've been up there many times. But I started out and I thought, this will be fine, it'll be lovely, it'll be great. Well, about 10 minutes in, I started to puff and pant. About 20 minutes in, I started to struggle a little bit more. And you know what it's like, you're going up, and if you've ever been to Cwmaman, there's loads of people always up and down there. And you always feel a bit intimidated by the ones who are just stomping past you, like they're going for a walk in a field. Like, you know, they've obviously keep fit quite regularly. And so then you feel like you have to keep up, or you have to keep going and not show them how tired you are. So I came up with a cunning plan, like Baldrick. I have a cunning plan. So what I thought I'll do, I thought I won't stop and show them I can't breathe. What I'll do, I'll pretend to take photos on the way up. Well, I actually did take photos on the way up. And while I'm taking photos on the way up, I'll breathe a little bit more and see if I can find my lungs. And so, and so that's what I did. And so every so often I stopped. And one guy came past and he said to me, he must have known what I was doing. He goes, there's no rush, mate. He said, you'll still get to the top. He said, some of these ones, they rush past. He said, they don't enjoy the scenery. They don't take it all in. I said, that's true. That's what I'm doing. I'm taking it all in. And so I was just trying to recover my breath as I was going up. But you know what? I wasn't as fast as a lot of them. And I got to the top eventually, but it was little by little. But you know what? I did it. I got up and I got back down and I accomplished what I wanted to do, and I sat up at the top and I saw the views and I enjoyed it. And I didn't try to keep up with the others. I didn't worry about what was going on around me. I just enjoyed the scenery and enjoyed the walk. And although I was a little bit unfit and a little bit out of breath, I thought, you know what, little by little, I'm going to get there. One step after the other. It might take me a lot longer, but I will get there eventually. And that's a little bit what I want to talk to you about this morning, is about this idea of little by little. And thank you, Tash, for reading that for us this morning. And that passage in Deuteronomy 7 is a great passage, and it's a great promise to the people of God in the Old Testament of how he's going to bring them into the promised land, the land of Canaan. And he's going to give them their own land, make them their own nation, and he's going to prosper them and bless them, and they're going to settle there. If you know the story of Moses leading the people out of Egypt, and that was the promise he gave them, that they're going to go to the promised land. There will be a wilderness detour and a lot of things going on and a lot of battles, but eventually they're going to inherit that which God had promised them. And I love the story, and I preach on it a lot, because it teaches us so much about our journey with God. The principles that are there, although they're thousands of years ago and they're in a different time and culture, the same God that brought them out and brought them in is the same God who leads and guides us today. Amen? So that's the link. If you think the Bible is irrelevant, it's not. The cultures may have changed and the times may have changed, but the God that we serve is unchanging. And the same God that delivered them from Egypt will deliver us from our difficulties and addictions and problems. And the same God that takes them into a better place will take us into a better place this morning. We believe that. Amen? Come on. Join with me. I'm preaching better than you're letting on. Come on. This is good stuff. And so we're going to look at this morning and see how God leads us into all that he promises this morning. But let me draw your attention to verses 21 and 23 this morning. It's going to come up on the screen for you. And Tasha read it for us earlier. It says, "Do not be afraid of those nations or your enemies, for the Lord your God is among you, and he's a great and awesome God." How many of you know that's important to know this morning? Because Israel were a small nation, and every nation around them was much bigger. So to fight them through strength and through power and through might was never going to work, because they would always be outnumbered. There will always be someone bigger and greater than them. But the point was, God was saying, I'm with you. And the victory is mine. The victory belongs to me. And I'm an awesome God. And no one can stand against me. So don't be afraid. God is with you. And I want to say that to you this morning. Don't be afraid. Don't be intimidated by the things of life. They may look bigger than you. They may look stronger than you. But the God that is behind you will defeat them and give you victory this morning, because he is an awesome God this morning. And then it says this, I put it in red for you. It says, "The Lord your God will drive those nations out ahead of you, little by little." And I want you to notice those words, little by little. And that's what I want to talk to you about this morning. And so that's the title of my message that's going to come up, little by little. A big God who works in small ways. He's a big God who can work in big ways as well, and often does. But he's also a big God who can work in small ways or little ways. And I want us to think about that this morning, because we live in a culture and a world that is constantly bombarded with the idea that bigger is better. Yes? When you watch the news, when you watch the adverts on telly, when you watch things, everything, consumerism is built around bigger is better. You need a bigger house. Maybe only one of you, but you need 10 bedrooms. You need a bigger car. There's only one of you, but you need 7 seats. Or you need a van. Everything is bigger. You need a bigger bank balance to be happier. No, I wouldn't mind that. I'll have a go at it. But it's all this bigger is better. You know, you have to have everything has to be on steroids. Everything has to be larger. You have to have bigger holidays and better holidays to enjoy them. Everything about it has got to be bigger. And then we sold this idea that if we do that, we'll find peace, we'll find joy, we'll find contentment, we'll find happiness. Life will be complete. The problem is that I found that people who have bigger and better still suffer from depression, anxiety, worries. They still sadly commit suicide. They still sadly have difficulties and problems. I don't see that many of them have got joy or happiness. And so that tells me, when I look at a world, that some people who have big bank balances, who have the fame and the fortune and can afford the bigger things, are still struggling. That tells me that that's not the answer. And there's nothing wrong with those things. And if you've got them, praise God for them. I hope you've got a bigger house and a bigger car and a bigger bank balance. I've got no problem with that. But what I'm saying is, what you'll find is they don't satisfy. It's the stuff delusion that we are sold that says, you know, these are the things that are important. And they're really not. Because you can lose all those things. And I think you can still have joy and happiness if you find it in the right place. Now this morning, my concern is not so much that the world is promoting this, but what happens is it creeps into the church. The thinking of the world creeps into the church. And sometimes we are sold the idea that bigger is better. You've got to have a big ministry to be important. You've got to have a big church to be significant. You've got to have a big personality. You've got to have a lot of charisma. You've got to be someone who is recognized and great and so important. If you're not a Billy Graham, then you're not important to God. And sometimes we buy into this thing that God can't use us effectively because we haven't got a big ministry or a big church or big recognition. And I want to say that that's not true either. That our significance and importance doesn't come from the size of our ministry or our churches or who knows our name or how important we are to the world. We are significant and we are important to God. God said to Israel, he said, I have chosen you, not because you are the biggest nation. He said, actually, you're the smallest. He said, but I've chosen you because I love you and you're my own special treasure. And I thought, what a wonderful thing that was. He said, I've chosen you, although you're small, smallest of all the nations, I love you and I care about you. And I'm going to show all the other nations how great your God is by the things that you're going to accomplish that can only be put down to a miracle. I'm going to show you the miraculous power of God working through you and accomplish great things. And I want you to know that this morning, that you may not have all that the world says you should have, but you are still significant, you are important, you are special, and God loves you for who you are, because you bear his image, because he has chosen you and brought you into his kingdom and made you his very own this morning. And some people may never know your name. You may never be famous. You may never have a fortune. You may never achieve all those things. But please don't measure your life and your significance and your importance by those, because the most important thing is that God knows us by name. When we get to eternity, God will know who we are. And I'd rather that God know who I am than anybody else and recognize me and approve of me. I often say, let's live for an audience of one. Not for the applause of many, but just for the audience of the King, and live to please him. And I think when we understand that, life becomes a lot easier, because a lot of pressures we put on ourselves is because we compete and we want to conform and we want to compare. And, we used to say years ago, keeping up with the Joneses. Do you remember that? If they change the curtains, I've got to change mine. They got a new car, I've got to have a new car. They've had a new kitchen, I've got to have a new kitchen, although I only put it in last year. That's what it used to be like, keeping up with the Joneses, didn't it? And that's stressful. That does my head in. I live around a lot of people who've got much more money than I have and can change things a lot more than I have. And they've got much bigger and better cars, and I can't keep up with them. But I don't want to. My car gets me from A to B. That's all I needed to do. I don't need it to do anything else. And so that's okay. But when we buy into that, it stresses us out so much. But when we realize that them things are not really the most important, it simplifies our life and takes the pressure off us. And in church life, I want to do the same. And God says to the nation of Israel, I'm going to lead you into everything I promised you. You're going to have the victory. You're going to inherit the promises. You're going to have a land that is amazing. And it's going to be abundant. And it's going to be everything you need it to. And you're going to prosper. And your families are going to settle there. Your children, your grandchildren are going to settle there. And you're going to have a great place to live. But I'm going to do it little by little. And I think the problem is that when we apply that to our lives, we forget that a big God can work in small ways. You know the old saying, God moves in mysterious ways? We've all used that saying, haven't we? But what I found is it is true. And it's mysterious to us, not because God doesn't want to show us, but because we miss it sometimes. We miss it because we're looking for big things. We're looking for the dramatic things. And sometimes God is actually working in the little ways and the small ways to accomplish his purposes. Because great purposes can be accomplished in small ways. You can show great kindness through doing little things. It doesn't have to be grand gestures all the time. But it's just the little everyday things that you're constantly doing that make a big difference. And that's what God works in. And so we mustn't limit God. And we mustn't miss God in what he's doing. Because when you read the Bible, you'll read this. It says in the Old Testament that sometimes he spoke and he thundered from heaven. And everyone was terrified by the voice of God. Because he thundered from heaven. And you think, that's awesome, that's powerful. That must have been great to hear God thunder from heaven. But there's also a time where it says he spoke with a still, small voice. And see, if you're looking for the thunder, then you'll miss the gentle whisper. Because if you think God only thunders, then you're not going to hear him whisper to your heart and to your life, because you've boxed him in and you've limited him. And God was trying to do something. God was trying to speak into your life. God was trying to move, but you missed it. Because you're the thunder people. Sons of thunder. Daughters of thunder. We want the dramatic. We want the loud. We want the big. And God says, actually, I can move in lots of different ways. So don't box me in and don't limit me this morning for what I want to do. Nicky Gumbel, who's a pastor of Holy Trinity Brompton in London, he said this. He said, if you think that small things can't make a big difference, then you've obviously never spent a night with a mosquito. And I like that, because that's true. If you've ever been on holidays, if you've ever been abroad, a mosquito in your room is a nightmare. Besides the noise they make, which will keep you awake, you'll wake up in the morning covered in lumps. Because if they particularly like your blood, you've had it. So, a mosquito makes a big difference, but it's only a small thing. When you think of a diamond, very small stone, but of great value. And so you can't put value or worth on the size of something. You can't say that because something's big, it has to make a difference. Something small is insignificant. That is simply not true. When I was growing up, I used to love Bruce Lee. I was always into martial arts and all that kind of thing. And I thought I was Bruce Lee for a time until I tried to do a roundhouse kick and I slipped and broke my wrist. And then I realized actually I wasn't Bruce Lee. I was more like Pee Wee Herman, I think, than Bruce Lee. But I grew up loving watching his films, watching his videos. And he was just a small man. He was a tiny man. But I tell you what, I wouldn't pick a fight with him. I would not have messed with him. Although he was so small, he was very skilled and one of the best in his areas and fields of martial arts and kung fu. And I just loved to watch what he did. What I'm saying is that small can be significant and make a difference. And God knew this. And so when he tells us to pay attention to things, one of the things he says in Proverbs and chapter 6, he says, take a lesson from the ants. Take a lesson from the ants. You can't get much smaller than an ant. There are things that are smaller than an ant, but that's pretty small. But he says, I want you to learn from these ants. And he's talking in the context, especially if you become complacent or lazy. He says, I want you to learn from these and how they work and how active they are. And so I want to just give you 4 amazing facts about ants. You didn't think you were going to learn about ants this morning, did you? But that's how good I am this morning. I educate you on all different levels. All right? So you're going to be like Ant-Man by the time you go out this morning. All right? 4 things that are amazing about ants that we can learn. Number 1, ants have superhuman strength. It says ants can carry objects 50 times their own body weight in size. Isn't that amazing? Just in their jaws. It says relative to their size, their muscles are thicker than those of larger animals, even humans. And I like this. It says the ratio enables them to produce more force and carry larger objects. If you had muscles in the proportion of an ant, you'd be able to lift a Hyundai over your head. That'd be pretty good, wouldn't it? Wouldn't need a jack, wouldn't need to go to the garage, you'd just lift it up and change the tyres there and then. That's what it says. If an ant was the same size as you, you could lift a car above your head. It says soldier ants use their head to plug holes. There are certain type of ants that the shape of their head fits perfectly into the hole where they nest, and the soldiers will plug the hole with their heads to stop other ants from coming in and other insects and attacking their nest and killing people. And they will sit there and plug that hole with their head. And their own ants who belong to their colony will come and tap them on the head, and they know that they belong, and they will let them in. Isn't that amazing? So if I tap you on the head this morning, I'm just being an ant, all right? Just being friendly. How are you doing, all right? I thought that was fantastic that God can do that. But there's also another side to them. They're a little bit sinister, because it says some of the ants enslave other ants to do their bidding. Oh, so you went quiet on that one. You don't like that one, do you? We don't like those ants. But some of them will. They will enslave other ants from other colonies if they're bigger than them, and they will make them do their work and do their bidding, and they will take them captive. It's a bit mean, but there we go. That's ants here. And then also there are scouting ants. I didn't know there were so many types. But there are scouting ants who are sent out to look for food. And what they will do, they will go foraging for food. And when they find a food source, they will lay a trail of scent to the food so the other ants will know where it is. And the other ants will follow the scouting ant's trail and also leave its scent, so it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And every ant after will also leave its scent, so that everybody from that colony will know where that food is. Isn't that incredible? I thought that was brilliant. I can smell my food coming from the kitchen, so I know where it is and I know where to go. But these ants, they just leave a scent constantly, and they will go back and forth until all the food is consumed, and they'll take it back to the colony. And so there's 4 amazing things you didn't know about ants this morning. That'll change your life. That's amazing, isn't it? You'll go out here so much more educated this morning. But consider the ant. A tiny little thing, but so powerful, so strong, and makes such a difference. And I want to encourage you this morning that you may feel like an ant. You may feel small and insignificant, but God can do incredible things in you and through you this morning, because it's not our size that matters, but the size of the God that we serve. A big God who works in small ways, little by little. And so I want to just say 2 things to you this morning about God taking you into everything everything he wants for you. And God does have a plan for you. He does have a purpose for your life. He does want to bless you and do great things for you. It doesn't mean it won't come without pain or suffering. You read about the children of Israel. They had to fight battles. They had to overcome. There was things that they had to deal with. So it's not all easy. It's not all handed to you on a plate. There are things you have to fight for, even in life. But he does want to bless your life this morning. But I want you to remember two things about God working little by little. Number one, don't despise the day of small things. This is what God said to Zechariah in the Old Testament. He was a man in the Old Testament and he was a prophet. And they were restoring Jerusalem and restoring the walls and starting to build, and the work had stopped and it was slow, and then it suddenly came to a halt, and they were asking the question, will we ever finish this work? Will it ever be accomplished? We don't seem to have the manpower. We don't seem to have the workers. What are we going to do? And one of the leaders was called Zerubbabel. That's a great name for your child if you ever want to name a kid, you know. Really good Welsh taffy name, that. Zerubbabel. And Zechariah came to him and says this. He says, God has spoken to me, and he says, it's not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord. And he says, don't despise the day of small beginnings, for God rejoices to see the work start in your hand. And so he was trying to tell them that, yeah, the work may seem slow, the work may seem little, but don't despise it because you've started. And little by little, I will provide workers, I'll provide the strength, and I will actually build this place. And I will actually build this temple and accomplish this. But it'll start off small, but it will come to completion. And so don't despise the day of small things, because we do. Let's be honest, we do. We're impressed with the big, and sometimes we think the small is insignificant, and so we overlook it. And in doing that, I think we miss so much of what God can do in and through our lives. We miss so much of the things that God can accomplish just in small ways, because it doesn't seem like a big thing, that he can't make a big difference. But don't miss God in that this morning. Don't despise it. Remember that from tiny acorns, great oaks come. And just through that little seed that you plant, maybe a kind word, a kind action, just something little, God can do a great work this morning. People don't always need grand gestures. They just need someone to listen to, someone to hug, someone to talk to them, someone to love them, just to say that they care. It doesn't have to be impressive. It doesn't have to be for everyone to see. But that small little thing that you do will make a massive difference. It was Mother Teresa who said, not all of us can do great things, but we can all do small things with great kindness. And that's true. And look at the difference she made. And the Welsh revival in 1904 started with just a handful of people. It started with one woman actually standing up in a prayer meeting crying out to God, and then others joined with her, and then through Evan Roberts, just a small amount of people, a great awakening and a great revival came. So don't despise the day of small things. Don't overlook ministries and works and what God is doing just because it seems small. Don't overlook churches because they seem small and be impressed with just the bigger churches, because it's not quantity but quality is what God is after. Don't despise that, otherwise you may just miss God. Number 2, let me just say this and I'll bring it to a close in a moment. Don't let impatience rob you of God's best for you. Don't let impatience rob you of God's best for you. Because the problem is when God works little by little, how many of you know that takes time? That takes time. George, how long have you been working on your house, mate? 4 years. How long have you got left? Another 2 years. See, he's little, exactly, mate. That's what I'm going to talk about. And George has bought a house in Cwmaman. He lives in London, and he's bought a house in Cwmaman, and he bought it to do up and restore. And if you ever want to go up, he'll be happy to show you it. But he's doing it all himself because he enjoys that, and he loves doing that. And so little by little, he's doing it, and one day it'll be completed, and he'll have nothing to do anymore, and I don't know what he's going to do. Then he'll buy another house or do something else. But it's little by little. Now, he could have hired people to come in, or he could have got people in and had it completed within a few months. But the joy of doing it himself and enjoying that work and accomplishing it and seeing what he's done with his own hands must be fantastic. I'll never know that experience because I can't knock a nail in the wall, but it must be wonderful, George. But it's little by little, and it takes time. And he has patience, because if he don't, he's going to drive himself mad. But you have to have patience, and things that are worthwhile, things that are a masterpiece and a work of art and are worth doing, take time. And God does that now. He calls us his masterpiece. He calls us a work of art that he's accomplished in us spiritually. And so he's taking his time, because God is not in a rush. He doesn't work to our timetable. He's not a McDonald's. He's not a fast food store. He's not a Chinese takeaway. He's not a microwave oven. You can't put him on for a minute and it pings and everything's done. We live in that society and it robs us of the ability to be able to wait. You know, when I was a kid, we grew up with Ataris and Spectrums. Anyone remember Ataris? If you're under 30, you're looking at me stupid, yeah. If you're under 30, you probably don't know what I'm talking about, or under 20. But we grew up with Ataris and Spectrums and Commodores. There was no Xboxes, there was no PlayStations in those days. And we had to plug there was hardly anything. And when we had a Spectrum, you had to put the tape in and put it down and press it for it to start. And then you had to let it load up. And you'd have all this thing on the screen. You remember it? And you had to sit there for what felt like an eternity just to play a game. And, you know, we did it because we knew no different. And it didn't seem long to us because that's all we had. Now, today, I can't wait 5 seconds for something to start up. If I put a game, I haven't got an Xbox, I got a Wii, but that sometimes takes too long, or a DVD. When I put it on to watch, I'm thinking, come on. And I think, where did my patience go? I would have had to wait 20 minutes longer when I was a kid. But it's because we've been kind of reprogrammed to think that everything is instant. Everything is instant. And you know what it's like if you get to the doctors and there's a queue and there's lots of people waiting, or you get to Asda's and then you start queue jumping, that's the worst thing to do, looking for the show, because we can't seem to wait. The problem is that when it comes to God and the purposes of God, he says, I'm going to work little by little. You're going to have to wait. Because you will not rush me, and you will not manipulate me, you will not intimidate me, and you're not in charge. I'm in control. And so if you want a life that is blessed and joyful and content and happy, then you need to get on board with my timetable and realize that there are some things that will be done instantly and there are some things that will take years. But I'll accomplish my purposes and I will do great things. But don't let impatience or a lack of patience rob you of God's best for you. I often say that the only thing standing between you and your dream is patience. That's all that's standing between you and God fulfilling everything he wants for your life and blessing your life. Is the simple fact that you just need to wait a little bit longer and a little bit more. And just understand that and get on board with it. And I've also said before to you, that you probably remember, that patience is not just the ability to wait, it's the ability to wait with the right attitude. Because you may be waiting, but you may be miserable. Have you met people like that? They're waiting, but they're miserable. You sit in the doctor's surgery and they've got to wait with you, but boy, they depress you. I feel worse coming out than I did going in. So I've sat next to someone who just moaned and moaned and moaned and moaned, and there's nothing you can do. You have to wait. You're 10th in line, whether you like it or not. You know, just cheer up about it. Enjoy it. Just do something else. But they complain and they moan and they blame everybody and Boris Johnson and the NHS and everything and all of this. And boy, you feel depressed. But waiting with the right attitude. And it's not easy sometimes, because I remember mentioning this before and encouraging you to do this, and I did the very opposite. I went out for a meal after a Sunday service, after preaching on this, and we were sitting at the table, and it was me, Helen, Stacey and Darine, and we ordered food, and it seemed to take forever to come, and I started to get grumpy. There's only two things that make me grumpy: tiredness and food. Food is usually the top one, okay? If I haven't eaten, don't look at me, don't talk to me, don't ask for pastoral counselling until I've had dinner, all right? Because I won't be able to help you. But food makes me really grumpy when I haven't eaten. And it seemed to take forever, and I started to whinge and moan and complain. And Stacey laughed, and she looked at me and she goes, Dale, patience is the ability to wait, but also wait with the right attitude, remember? And I'd only just preached this about half an hour ago, and I felt a bit embarrassed. But see, we forget so quickly, don't we? And it's easy to say this up here on the platform until it comes to something that you have to wait for. The worst thing I hate is when you get to an airport and it says that your flight has been delayed. Oh, that depresses me. But that's first world problems, isn't it? Let's be honest, it's really not that big a deal. It's really not that big a deal. But we get wound up by so many things. But you know what? We serve an amazing God who is a big God. He's an awesome God. But he is doing so much in your life and around you in small, little, seemingly insignificant ways that we don't recognize. And I want to just ask you the question this morning: what is God doing in your life? What is God doing for you? Do you recognize him at work in your life? Or are you overlooking the hand of God and the power of God in your life because it doesn't seem big and dramatic? I want you to stop and appreciate the little things, because I guarantee you God is doing more than you think. God is working in ways that you can't imagine, and he's accomplishing things in your life. It's just perhaps you don't always see it or even appreciate it. And so maybe this year, as we go into a new year, we need to stop and give thanks for the little things. You know, St. David, not King David in the Old Testament, but St. David, the patron saint of Wales, one of his famous sayings was, do the little things. And you know that that's important. In marriage, it's important. My wife doesn't always want flowers and chocolates. You would like them sometimes, though, wouldn't you? Just the chocolates. But you know, they are grand gestures, and I could take it on holidays and take it out for meals and do all these grand things. But what she needs is every day for me to pay her attention and care for her and look after the children and love her and just be thoughtful and mindful. And that's, you know that in marriage. It's not just the grand things. I can't just live any way I want and treat her any way I want and then turn up with flowers and chocolates and make everything all right. How many of you know that doesn't work? You're not looking at me like, yeah, I know, I've been here, I've done that. It doesn't work, because it's the little things every day that make marriage work, or that make relationships work. And it's the little things that make our relationship with God work this morning. This church is significant. It's not a large church. Nobody knows me. Someone tried to Google me on the internet once, and they said, no match is found for Dale Thomas. Because nobody knows who I am. Nobody has a clue who I am. You can put in Hope Church Cwmaman and that'll pop up, but Dale Thomas will never pop up unless someone becomes famous who's a Dale Thomas. Rob Thomas will come up. If you put him in Matchbox 20, my wife's favourite band, he'll pop up, but I won't. But it doesn't matter, because God is working. My identity and my purpose is found in him, not found out there and in the applause of men and women. And so this church is significant, you are significant this morning, and God is doing great things. Little by little, God is going to bring you into everything he wants to. Little by little, he'll deliver you from addiction, from sin. Little by little, he'll drive out those things that have overcome you and overwhelmed you. You know that I struggle with anxiety myself, and God hasn't completely healed me of it, but little by little, I win the victory. Little by little, I overcome. Every time I stand on this platform, it's a victory. Every time I do something I don't want to do, it's a victory. One of the things that causes me the greatest anxiety is funerals, but I still do them. Because it's part of my job and it's part of my pastoral care. And every time I stand up and do one, I think, you know what, that's another victory. I didn't really want to do it. Every time I'm put out of my comfort zone, when they ask me to speak at youth, that's out of my comfort zone. So I talk into young people who really don't care what you think. They did on Friday. It was a lot of fun. They weren't as good as you guys. And it was totally out of my comfort zone, and I was trying to talk to them about identity and significance, and they couldn't care less. But you know what? It's a victory. Because if you stand up and do it, whether you do it shaking or badly or whatever, you still did it. And so a little victory is still a victory, and we're celebrating. Amen? And so let's look for God in the little things as well as the big things. I hope he comes in revival. I hope he does amazing things that are obvious and thunderous and wonderful. But you know what? I don't mind if it's little by little. As long as we get there and we fulfill our purposes, that's all that matters. And so I'm going to just ask Claire to come up this morning. She's going to lead us in our final song, and then I'm just going to pray to close and ask